Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Monday edition of The Rundown. I am your host, Craig DeLuz, but as we all know, I do not do this program by myself.
Hey, everybody, this is Mike Poworski, and I am here as your co host today on the Manic Monday edition of The Rundown.
So is that what we're doing now? We're gonna nickname every day.
Yeah, listen, there's no way I'm going to remember it unless I put nicknames on it.
Okay, all right. So we're gonna call it Now we're gonna call it Manic Monday. So
It's just
note to
another
self.
Manic Monday.
Yeah, you're dating yourself, bruh.
That's all right. Somebody's going to date me.
So how was your weekend?
Oh, you know what, Craig? I went out and shaved my head and shaved my beard off just because I felt like doing it this weekend. No other reason.
Now we all know that's not the case. Those of us who follow you on social media realize that you got to go play warrior or soldier this weekend.
That's it. In the words of the great John Winger, I did a little army training, sir.
Well, I'm digging the stash, digging the stash.
Well, yeah, you know what? That ain't going anywhere, and I already got talked to about it being too long, and I said, well, good thing I'm leaving here tomorrow, huh, sir?
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yep,
Good
yep,
stuff.
yep.
Hey, folks, last week there was a lot of stuff in the news, so forgive us if some of this is a little bit late, but we wanted to make sure to talk about this. This first one in particular. Now, you guys remember last week the president gave he speechified before Congress and talked about all the nice socialist programs that he wanted to implement and how he was going to spend us into prosperity, which I don't know exactly how that happens, but and then Senator Tim Scott from the state of South Carolina gave the response and did a phenomenal job. I mean, most of the time you can only make mistakes. You don't really advance yourself or do better, but I'm telling you, he did phenomenal. But that wasn't really what the story was. The story was afterwards, how Democrats responded. You know, the number one thing that was the issue, and that nobody really is even talking about, is how the term Uncle Tim was trending on Twitter for 11 hours before Twitter finally decided to take it down. And that was just kind of the tip of the iceberg when it came to all of the racist stuff that Democrats were saying about Senator Tim Scott, simply because, well, he decided to leave the liberal plantation.
You know, ridiculous, Craig. It angers me. First off, you know, Tim Scott had an incredible speech. I think he laid waste to the president's speech. And it's Senator Tim Scott, by the way. In Florida we like to call him the good Senator Scott, not the other Senator Scott we got down here, that rhino bastard. But I digest. What we have going on with Tim Scott was again a great speech. Now, here's what again just annoys the hell out of me. President Trump could come out and say something like "Good Morning America," and they'd pull it down because it was racist. Yet Twitter wants to say that they let Uncle Tim trend for 11 hours before they went, is there something wrong with that? Oh, we didn't know. It's clearly partisan crap. And we know that all of their stances about racism and every other ism that they have out there are just lies to push their agenda.
Yeah. No, and it's the thing, and the interesting thing also about it is just how little people talked about. The thing made me mad was it took away from what was the most important part of both the speech and his response was just how much President Biden is seeking to fundamentally change the relationship between the people and the government through spending programs and giving people stuff, taking from one group of people and then giving it giving it to the government, and then taking a portion of that and then giving it to other people. It's going to increase government dependence on the government, but also increase government control on the means of people's wealth and the means of resources. And I thought the senator did a phenomenal job of pointing out why that is a bad idea. And once again, for that, they decided that they were going to badmouth him and call him all sorts of racist names. And liberals had no problem with that.
Yeah. Well, listen, again, that's the Democrat way. You know, it's bigger government, less foreign policy. That's how they work it. Evidently, now we're going to add in control via racism. We already know that since LBJ's days that They're going to try and control the black population by creating all these welfare programs and buying the votes. And we know that over the past 10 years, thanks to old Hillary Rodham there, she said that the Hispanics are the new black people. And she wasn't that polite when she said it. That's the new vote they're trying to get and vote and claim all of these new immigrants, whether illegal or legal immigrants to the United States, by giving them social welfare to buy their votes. It's the way of the Democrats. The only way they can get anything is through intimidation, through propaganda, through racism, and through welfare programs. They're buying votes.
Well, and what I'll say is this: people talk about how much racism there is in the country. I have found that the majority of racism that I've experienced, that I've had to deal with, it's largely been liberals.
Right.
And when I say liberals, I'm not just talking about white liberals. I'm talking about the black liberals who allow some of the racist stuff. I'm sorry. I don't care what you think about Tim Scott. The fact is that the black liberals should have been standing up and saying, no, these sorts of comments, this sort of stuff is not acceptable. Instead, they were perpetuating it. They were spreading it. And, that is to me, that is the worst of the worst.
It's the racist propaganda that they're pushing.
Right.
I know a little off topic, but we've seen it and we've talked about it here before. All the big stories the past couple of weeks, and now there's going to be giant network specials on them. Craig, is the Stop the Asian Hate, Stop the Asian Hate. Well, Craig, you know the numbers. Who's committing the crimes against Asians?
Well, first of all, it's mostly Asians. Let's be clear. One, It's mostly Asians.
Yep.
But then after that, it's not whites. After those numbers, then come African Americans, then whites. I mean, a small. First of all, the increase, by the way, is, while percentage wise, it's been a huge increase. In terms of sheer numbers, it hasn't been.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just more ways to, again, control the media, control the message, control the message, control the masses.
Well, they're creating a story where there isn't really a story. And, that, by the way, brings me to our next story. I was perusing the news, and which I do something. It's a big part of what I do for a living. It's just following news. So I have to read a lot of and watch a lot of the mainstream media. And I came across a story, and Cam Edwards over at Bearing Arms came across the same story and found it odd that all of a sudden there was a story. And we all know that the percentage of African Americans or black people in this country that are purchasing firearms has dramatically increased. And for some reason, NBC thought it was an interesting story. I thought it was important to note that while there's been an increase in people buying guns, there hasn't been a significant increase in the number of gun store ownership amongst black people. And I'm wondering, I'm asking myself, why is this a story?
Yeah, why? That's the question, Craig. I remember a couple of years back when the NFL got in trouble because they had, I forget the number exactly, 70-80% of the league were black Americans, but there were no black head coaches or black ownership. Well, I don't think you can control the ownership part. You either have the money or you don't. But the coaches, and it's based on talent and skills and abilities. Well, there were none there. It became an issue. We got a few black head coaches. We probably need some more if we want to get to parity. But that was a good point. That was good issues they brought up. But listen, we're talking about black ownership going up in guns over the past year. You know how long it takes to get you and establish a gun store? You know how long it takes the ATF to say yes? Craig, there might be 100 in the pipeline right now trying to become black gun store owners, but we wouldn't have any idea because ATF drags their feet like you wouldn't believe when it's time to get a new gun store. This is a non-issue. This is a non-issue. If black people want to own a gun store, they'll own a gun store. There's no laws or anything in place to say, I'm sorry, black people can't own gun stores. If they want to do it, they'll do it. If not, get out of their way. Let them go back to whatever job they're doing.
Well, and what's funny about it is that if you look at where there are large numbers of black people, mostly it's in states that have very, very strict gun laws and make it very difficult. First of all, they tend to be anti-business, period. They make it difficult for you to start up and run a business, let alone a gun store, one of the most highly regulated industries out there. Not only do you have, you guys out there, you deal with ATF, but imagine if you also had to deal with the California Department of Justice.
Yeah, that's true. Listen, we have to deal with local pockets of liberals when you get into the cities. That's about it. But we don't have to deal with the California Department of Justice. That is, is basically the size of the U.S. Department of Justice, and but they far exceed their Nazi regime techniques and stamping down on those people that want to exercise their Second Amendment rights.
Well, and then on top of it, you just have the fact that they're not really interested in justice. Their whole goal is to put people out of business, in particular
Exactly
gun
right.
store owners. So,
Yep.
why would someone, knowing that that's the position of the place where you live, why would someone then choose to go into that industry?
Well, it's California, Craig. Remember, they don't care. You and I can both know that their whole goal is to either put you out of business or fine you and tariff you and fees you to death, so you can't afford it. But well, you know what? They don't care. They want that money from you. They need that money from you to run their operation, and it doesn't
Yep.
matter to them if you've got a business or not.
Yes, yes, it is true. It is true. It is true. That is their agenda. And, you know, okay, so this next story was kind of interesting. It was interesting to me because I was hoping that with Trump now being out of office, you would think that the mainstream media would try in some way, now that they've been exposed by the president, by former President Trump, as being fake news, as reporting on stories and being inaccurate time after time after time. I would have thought that they would have made an extra step to make sure that they didn't do that anymore. Well, nothing's changed with the fake news media, and they don't even realize how easy it is for them to get caught. So last week, you guys we didn't talk about it a whole lot because there were so many other things in the news. But last week, the Department of Justice raided the home and the business of Trump's personal attorney or former personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, former U.S. attorney. And they wound up saying in their news reports, and started with NBC News and New York Times and a bunch of other outlets, basically said that, well, yeah, no, he knew he was under investigation. Well, it turns out they were wrong. They relied on an anonymous source. All of them said they had anonymous sources and that they had verified those sources, and it turns out that they were wrong. And then they turned around, and as a typical fashion, they didn't put out another story noting that they were wrong, put out another headline. Instead, what they did was they went back and they just updated the story that millions of people had already read and were probably not going back to read, and said, well, yeah, we corrected it. But in the end, did they really correct it?
Now, listen to America's mayor. That's the other nickname you forgot for Giuliani. Remember, he was America's mayor after 9/11. Craig, the news media has gone from fake news to flat out propaganda. They'd throw the fake news and the nothing burgers out during President Trump's administration, but now it's pure 100% unadulterated propaganda coming from this administration. Again, control the message, control the media. Control the message, control the media, control the media, control the masses. That's what they're doing. They knew this was a lie, Craig. You know what happens here. They put this story out knowing full well that the headlines were false or that the story contained false information, because the way they do it now is put that story out there, and if somebody calls them on their fake part, their false news on there, well, rather than print a retraction or print a correction to it, they're just quietly going to go back and change one or two sentences in the original story a month later. Meanwhile, 95% of the people have already read that story. Last 5% reading it have no idea anything's ever changed.
Right. And it's funny when you actually then go back and look at why so many on the left are so passionately angry about some things. I've come to realize that in some cases, dude, they're not getting the truth, and they don't even know they're not getting the truth.
Yeah, because it's the blind following of the media, of this propaganda machine that is being put to us from this administration.
Well, exactly. Well, another great example has to do with free speech, right? Because we're talking about newspapers. We're talking about quote unquote free speech, and one of the things that actually has come out recently, and you guys may or may not have heard this, but 3D guns. So there was a big deal when I worked with the Firearms Policy Coalition. There was a big deal about the ability to put the plans for 3D guns online. And you had a number of attorneys general who were going after businesses and entities that were actually putting these plans online. And it really wasn't about the Second Amendment. It was really about free speech. It was about the First Amendment and what is speech. Well, a 3-judge panel in the Ninth Circuit, of all places, has ruled that, yes, it is okay. It was okay to put the plans for 3D firearms online. And they specifically cited the arguments relating to free speech.
Yeah, Craig. You know what? I need one of those music buttons that just plays circus music. Doot, 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 doot. Anytime we talk about the Ninth Circus, so we can have that playing in the background. I'm going to do that for the next show. But yeah, this is great news. You know, this information's now out there. Again, Ninth Circuit said that it could finally go out. This is the case that originally started with Cody Wilson and Defense Unlimited. You've seen this go back and forth a couple of times now over the past 3-4 years, and this is great. This is a victory for the First Amendment. It's a victory for the Second Amendment. I wonder how this is going to play into their ghost gun argument, though, Craig, because if they're going to be outlawing ghost guns, why can't they outlaw 3D printers? Why can't they outlaw 3D made firearms?
Well, I think that in the end, you're going to start to see, first of all, the administration is, Democrats have decided that they don't care whether something is constitutional or not. They're going to do it and then make the people take them to court. They're gonna violate our rights and then make us go to court to get our rights back. They already determined that's just how they're going to do things. And the worst part is they're going to use our own tax dollars to fight to keep our rights from us. That's interesting. But like I said, in this particular case, once again, when it comes to freedom of speech, it's like, so you're going to allow things like the Anarchist Cookbook to be available in libraries and online, but you're not going to allow the ability, the plans for a 3D firearm to be online? It absolutely, positively makes no sense. But they don't really have to make sense. All they have to do is say, well, guns.
Right. Remember, the president said, listen, I'm not talking about changing the Constitution. I'm talking about reasonable changes. Reasonable changes. Well, guess what, Joe? There's provisions in the Constitution. Craig, you know why they don't go out and create a new amendment? Because, by the way, you can't amend an amendment. The only way you can amend an amendment by making a new amendment that says that amendment doesn't apply anymore. It's kind of a misnomer with the words there. But the Constitution is very clear on how you create new amendments, and we've done it, 17 times since the Bill of Rights, right?
Right.
So why don't we do that? Because they could never get the votes. They could never get 66% of the states on board. They could never get the votes in the Senate or the House to agree. They know they can't do it, so they're going to try changing laws. Craig, what do you think would happen if they passed a law that said, "Listen, we're not going to have due process unless you pay $400 and get some training ahead of time. But we're not going to change the Constitution. We're just going to make a law after that."
We're going to change the interpretation, right? And that's why, folks, that's why language is so important. They are literally redefining terms, phrases, and words so that they can then change the meaning of laws, right? They're taking away our rights simply by change. They figure, well, we can't mold reality to fit. We can't change the law, so we're going to change reality to fit what we want the law to be.
Hey, Craig, listen, we already know this, and we see this happening because and they're not just changing the interpretation; they're flat out creating new laws. New laws are new gun. You know what? We respect the Second Amendment, but here's a gun law that says you can't have assault weapons or 10-round magazines. Hold on, this shall not be infringed. Let's go ahead and write a new law that says, you know what? The right to face your accuser, not so much. You don't need that anymore. I know that's in the Fifth Amendment, but no longer is that required. We're not going to do that anymore.
Well, if you look at red flag laws, many of the red flag laws, you don't get a chance to face your accuser. And oh, by the way, you're guilty until proven innocent. Yep. By the time you get into court, you've already had your rights and your property taken away from you. And once again, you may or may not get to face your accuser. You're not told the standard by which you are being judged. And oh, by the way, you don't have the right to an attorney because it's a civil, not a criminal case. So now you have to now get your own attorney.
See, that's called a meatball, Craig. You see that? I tossed it up in the air and you hit it out of the park. That's exactly it. The other example I had is with Zoom court. By the way, is it really facing your accuser if they're on a monitor, 100 miles away?
Right. Yep. Okay. Probably not. Probably not.
No, I don't
Hey,
agree
but
with
you know what? All is not bad news.
Yeah.
There's actually been a bill introduced by Senator Cornyn, interestingly enough, which would actually create national conceal carry reciprocity. I got to admit, I'm a little. I don't want to say perturbed. I'm both perturbed, upset, but also kind of enjoy it. So like, why wasn't this bill introduced when Republicans were in the majority in the Senate, when the House had already passed a bill with concealed carry reciprocity? One has to ask. I mean, even though I'm glad to see the bill introduced, one has to ask why him and why now.
Well, that's an easy one, Craig. And I'm privy to some of the goings on over there in Texas with the Texas politics from some of the friendships I've made. The John Cornyn there. Listen, in Texas they call him the Texas Mitt Romney. Because he's the rhino flip flopper for them. Now he has no intent, no desire of getting this pushed through through the Senate, and he knows it's probably not going to get through the Senate because nobody's going to cross over on this from the Democrat side. This is his way after some previous decisions over the past couple of months and him siding with the Democrat administration. This is his attempt. As Texas is looking at a constitutional carry law, this is his attempt to gain favor with the Texas voters as we start heading into the cycle. There's no intent, no desire whatsoever. He's trying to buy back votes in Texas.
That was you called it meatball.
Yep,
that's what that one was.
Oh, I got one. I hit it out of the park.
You got hit it out of the park. That's exactly. And the thing is that there are a lot of Republicans who are like that, and they're not necessarily left wingers. They're just not really pro-gun. They've never introduced a piece. They never introduce a piece of pro-gun legislation. They almost never speak out against anti-gun legislation. And when they do speak, they speak oftentimes out of a real, for lack of a better term, ignorance, because as soon as they open their mouth, they demonstrate they don't know what they're talking about. But they want to come across as being pro-gun. I appreciate the fact that organizations that don't consider people, I don't consider someone pro-gun. If you don't introduce pro-gun legislation that protects our fundamental right to keep and bear arms or advances that right, I don't consider you to be pro-gun. You may not be anti-gun, but I don't consider you to be pro-gun.
Yeah, I agreed. Those, when you see the NRA ratings, when people still paid attention to the NRA or other organizations, and they would give the ratings for their pro-gun, whether it was, A, B, C, D, or, 2 thumbs up or whatever it happened to be. If all they did was vote for gun legislation, I think that should have been a C rating. It's not until you start authoring or co-sponsoring gun legislation, realistic gun legislation, not this crap that Cornyn put out there because he needs to buy votes, but somebody that has the passion and the desire to see to reverse gun reform, to give us back our gun rights. Somebody's involved in that process. That's when they get the A from me.
Right. Exactly. But that's also the reason why we need to do a better job of informing ourselves on politics. Those of us who are in the gun community, so many people are just interested in, look, I want to go buy my guns. I want to go buy my ammo. I want to go shoot, take my family out shooting. I want to go hunting and yada, yada, yada. And I really don't want to get involved in politics. Folks, if you're not involved and engaged and you don't understand, look, a guy like this is going to dupe you into thinking he is pro-gun. You are going to continue to support him, and your rights are not going to be protected. So it's important that we recognize and point out exactly what this is and why it's being introduced now by the person who's introducing it.
Yeah, listen, if you ever have any questions about what's going on in Texas, and Texas is really great this way because not many states have this. They have an elected official that's in charge of the party for both parties in that state. The party representative, the head of the Texas Republican Party, and it's an elected position in Texas, is retired Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. And you just look up the colonel, and he'll give you any scoop on anything you want in Texas.
Yes, he will. Hey, as we go into the parting shot, I wanted you're the one who picked this one out, so I wanted you to kind of share the story behind it, and then we'll share the parting shot.
Okay, this is a great parting shot. Craig, are you familiar with what's going on with the price of wood around the country?
Absolutely not. I have
Oh,
no
okay.
idea what's going
Well,
on.
listen, a typical piece of lumber is you get you a 2x4, not pressure treated, at $2 to $3. It gets you some your 5/8 inch of lumber, some plywood, 6-8 bucks. It's gone up. A hundredfold. You've got pieces of lumber going for $20 a piece. You've got pieces of plywood going for $60-$70 a piece. It's absolutely ridiculous. The how high, because of what's going on with some regulations here with the current administration, the price of building materials, wood in particular, has gone up, and that's the basis for this parting shot.
Wow. Okay.
Yep, the wood's worth more than the coke.
Wow. Okay. Well, but it's just crazy. People don't understand. It's like the other day I drove by and literally gas prices have gone up almost $1 in the state of California since the election of Joe Biden. And people want to deny. I'm looking at the cost of other things. Everything seems to be going up. And yet you have you have Facebook calling stories or correcting stories or fact checking stories when you talk about prices going up, or you talk about gas prices going up, or in this case, we're talking about wood going up. It's all related to one thing: Joe Biden.
Joe Biden and inflation, unemployment, everything. That's where we are. This is exactly what's going on. But they're artificially controlling the market, artificially, like lying to you. Like they're going to keep the Dow where it is no matter what, because if that starts to bottom out, then you start to get panic. Gas prices have gone up. Listen, if I could get 5 minutes alone in a room with the executives from gas companies, we would have ourselves a come to Jesus meeting, because guess what? The price of a barrel of gas is the same now as it was pre 9/11. Yet we have triple the price. Where's all that money going? In the pockets of those CEOs. So yeah, give me that meeting. 5 minutes.
Well,
Promise.
it ain't just the CEOs. Honestly, you know who the biggest profiteer is? Who gets more money? Government.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Government makes more money off of each gallon of gas than any of the companies do. Than anyone. Than those who take it out of the ground, those who refine it, or those who sell it to the consumers. No, the biggest benefactor of big oil, is government.
Well, you and I have already said it on the show 100 times and all the previous shows. We're ready to punch the government in the face over this nonsense. But you're right that it's ever since 9/11, these are all security fees and everything that's been taken out of fuel costs. But listen, the CEOs are no angels, Craig. The government took away 50% of their profits. So you know what they did? Just like you're going to do when you get a $15 an hour guy working at a hamburger place. They're going to raise the price of the product. So they raise the price of the product to get back to the profit margin they like, and the government gets to keep the part of the profit margin that they like.
Exactly. And in the end, we're the ones that get screwed.
Now, guess what? Where are you going to go? I'm going to raise the gas to $10 a gallon. You're going to not buy it? What are you going to do? Ride a bicycle to work, you fat bastard? You know you're not going to do it. Eat a salad.
On that note, we're going to call it a day. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in to The Rundown. We really appreciate you liking, sharing, and subscribing. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, if you're not following us on Facebook, make sure that you do it, and encourage your friends to do the same.
Like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you on Taco Tuesday.
Taco Tuesday. Holler at you later.